a named roll call this morning. And if you could please list the name of the jurisdiction that you're representing. Anna, could I ask you to begin?
Good morning. I'm Ana Olivares, Pima County.
Thank you. Beth? Beth Abramovitz, Town of Sarita. Okay. Diana?
Good morning, everybody. Diana Alarcon, City of Tucson.
Thank you. Greg?
Good morning. This is Greg Hitt, participating for Mick Jensen on behalf of City of South Tucson.
Thank you, Greg. Jason?
Jason Bahi, Pasco Yaqui Tribe.
Thank you, Jason. I can hear you loud and clear.
Good.
Jose?
Jose Rodriguez, Town of Oro Valley.
Thank you. Michael?
Hi, Mike Smeckle with the Tucson Airport Authority.
Thank you. Good morning. And Robin?
Robin Rains, City of Tucson.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask our staff to join.
Carolyn,
Yes?
this is Catherine Skinner. I'm attending with Anna in the same room, so you don't see me on your list.
That's right. Thank you for that.
County?
Gotcha. Okay. And when Keith jumps on, we'll capture it for the record. Are you here now, Keith? I can see your name as an attendee, but I can't hear you. Okay. I believe Keith is with us and is currently muted, so we'll name him.
Just got in.
Okay, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Carolyn?
Thank you. Okay, and if I could ask our members of PAG staff to introduce themselves, starting with Jim.
Jim DeGrood, PAG RTA.
Thank you. Okay, we also have Catherine Mitchell, Nathan Barrett, Paul Castertano, Rick Ellis, and Sonia Kelly.
And Carolyn, I'm on as well. This is Jamie Brown, and I think I heard Mark Hoffman in the background also.
Yeah. Thank you.
And Rod is joined now as well.
Oh, welcome, Rod.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Sorry I'm late.
It's all right. Okay. Anyone else from PAG that we need to introduce this morning?
Dave Atler, PAG.
Good morning, Dave.
Good morning.
Karina Gill, PAG RTA.
Good morning.
James Tao, RTA.
Thank you. Okay, we also have Jeff Hillebrand with us. Okay, I believe that's everyone on the list. And with that, we'll move on to our second item in the agenda, which is in-kind form. We've all are familiar with this, that as a regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by our attendees, volunteers, and PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply to use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you are paid with federal dollars, please state your name now.
Jason Bahi.
Thank you, Jason. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. We move to item 3 on our agenda. This is a brief overview of key considerations for the FY 22 to 26 TIP development process. Mr. Brown, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Lori. As for this meeting, we wanted to provide a brief overview of the key considerations for this TIP development cycle. Some of this is just serving as a reminder, but it's important as we kick off this important meeting. The TIP development notice of funding availability memo, which was shared in August at the beginning of the TIP cycle, articulates RTA board and PAG regional council policies or direction These policies or directions support regional priorities as well as financial considerations that guide how PAG RTA committees inform the process. Moreover, the PAG tip is developed consistent with federal regulations for metropolitan planning organizations like PAG. As described in the NOFA memo, the only funding sources available for new programming are the FTA 5307, 5339, and STBG, Service Transportation Block Grant Program Flex Funds for transit projects. The Transit Working Group is using a competitive selection process as required by FDA for those funds. Moreover, for available funding sources other than the transit funds mentioned above, the priority is adjusting the programming on existing projects to ensure that the fiscal year 2022 to 2026 TIP meets RTA commitments as promised to the voters. As you all know, the RTA is responsible for serving as the fiscal manager of the RTA's 20-year voter-approved plan. Additionally, the RTA Citizens Accountability for Regional Transportation, or CART, Committee's role is to ensure RTA projects are being delivered as promised. Therefore, RTA cash flow, project readiness, ballot commitments, and other factors must be carefully considered by the RTA during the TIP development process. Moreover, a performance review will be undertaken by the RTA, and we must demonstrate that we're meeting RTA's commitments in the upcoming TIP. Thus, the priority for this TIP development cycle, like the previous cycle, is again on the RTA and working collaboratively with our member agencies to meet the ballot commitments. So as Mr. DeGrood will discuss later, our focus today will be on the draft RTA roadway element project list as the first list of several lists that will be developed for this TIP, the fiscal year 22 to 26 TIP. Other lists like the Transit Working Group recommendation and the ADOT list will come later. As with previous TIP cycles, the development of the ADOT project list is on a separate schedule as ADOT works statewide to develop the next 5-year construction program. Thus, review and approval of the ADOT project list for the PAG TIP will occur separately. According to the schedule in the TIP NOFA memo, we anticipate that the ADOT list will be ready for TPC review in mid-January. Prior to that, at the December TPC meeting, we anticipate providing an opportunity to review the other lists that are available, including RTA projects and transit projects. As it relates to ADOT programming at the January TPC meeting, if not prior, there will be an opportunity to provide input and suggestions on the ADOT initial recommendation list. In summary, working to meet the commitments of the RTA plan is the highest priority for this TIP cycle. The TIP development process takes up to 9 months. And as indicated in the August TIP NOFA memo schedule, we will be working with different project lists at different times during this cycle. So with that, thank you very much for the time. I'll turn it back over to you, Ms. Lori.
Thank you, Jamie, for providing that action item for us. When we move on to item 4. Okay. I'll be providing a brief summary of our individual jurisdictional meetings that we held on September 4th and provide a quick status update on how we came to the list that Mr. DeGrood will be providing in the following item on the agenda. During the week of September 14th, we had the option or the opportunity to meet with each one of our member jurisdictions. We had a clear agenda and outline to make sure that we addressed each of our items directly with the jurisdictions, and we met in sequence as listed, beginning with the Pasco Yaqui Tribe, ADOT, the City of Tucson, Pima County, the City of South Tucson, Town of Sarita, Town of Marana, Town of Oro Valley, and the Tohono O'odham Nation. These meetings provided an opportunity for us to meet one-on-one with the jurisdictions and check in on where everyone was on their project list and what was coming up in the future. We also wanted to discuss and clarify early where our jurisdictions were with our focus on the RTA projects. And we use that information that we gathered to create the list that Mr. DeGrood will be presenting shortly. As the next TIP coincides with the final year of the current RTA plan, we wanted to work together to ensure that we meet our commitments to the voters and fund the RTA projects to the full ballot amount. During the discussions that we held with each one of you, Mr. DeGrood provided a quick overview of all the RTA forecast. We talked about our projections and where we were financially, discussed years when we were going to have reduced revenues. And we discussed the possibility of moving projects up or down on the final years, fiscal years. Thank you. We did that. We talked on. We discussed each item that was currently in our TIP database, which were the projects that are currently programmed. Each jurisdiction was able to provide for us updates on where they were on their project planning and what stages they would be entering in fiscal year 22 to 26. And with that, I'd like to move on to item 5, which was a review and discussion of the draft FY 22 to 26 RTA project list. I would like to let everyone know that this is an action item. And if there should be any type of a motion, we request that the appropriate TIP subcommittee member make the vote. Mr. DeGroot.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ms. Lori. I appreciate your introduction, and I'd like to address the draft financial plan with the RTA TIP committee. What we've presented here, I know we submitted material to you in advance of this meeting. The screen that you should be seeing of the TIP looks a little different than that. The numbers are the same, but we've reformatted this so that it's a working spreadsheet. Each of the individual projects are listed by ballot number, their TIP ID, just as they are in the normal TIP printout. In the case of the top 3 lines on each of the years, they are HERF, RTA, and STBG in order. We've set this up so that we've identified on the right-hand side of your screen the amount that's needed to be programmed. That's most cases, it's the remaining funding that has not been programmed to date to meet the RTA ballot amount. This is a summary of the amount of money between regional funds and RTA funds that are programmed in the 22 to 26 period that we've proposed here. And you can see how that works on each of the 3 lines. We have a 0 check, which basically confirms that we've fully programmed. And just for everybody's information, we have what's currently in the fiscal 21 TIP, inclusive of rollovers from prior years. That's the way we've gone ahead and set this out. One of the things that we hope to accomplish today is to allocate the RTA and regional funds in such a fashion that they're consistent with the jurisdiction's ability to deliver the projects, recognizing, of course, that there may be a shortfall in funding relative to the current estimates. That is not something we're going to try to attempt to deal with today. That really involves policy issues that we need to bring before the Technical Management Committee and ultimately the RTA board. I can tell you that we do have funds over. If we program to the ballot amount, there are additional funds, even with the most dire forecast, that would be available to be brought forward to help augment projects, if that is the desire of the RTA board. With that, I'd like to go through, or before I say that, we have attempted to try to lay this out in a fashion that makes sense and is consistent with what we heard from the jurisdictions as we did our meetings last month, recognizing, of course, that things may be moving, we may not have accurately captured this. This is a work in progress. The reason that we have a live spreadsheet here is so that if we need to move things around, we can do so. There's no pride in authorship here. This was just an attempt to try to reflect what's available in the plan, remaining in the plan, together with the priorities and readiness, project readiness for delivery, as we heard, or as we thought we heard from the jurisdictions through our interview process. If there is one key thing that we need to be mindful of, it is the need to fully utilize the STBG in the year it's available. That's probably the biggest concern that I have at this point, is just making sure that we've got them in the right years. What I'd like to do is go through each individual project with the jurisdictional or the lead agencies that are involved in them, and review the funding as it's presented. If you kindly let us know if there's the opportunity to absorb federal monies on this project, so that if we see the need to, or if we find projects that can't absorb federal funding, can we put in? If you can identify whether that project could accept federal funds, that would be helpful. If you go to the bottom, we do have some check funding on the bottom as well, so you can see whether or not the estimated amount of 12R or STBG funding is programmed in the spreadsheet as we've laid it out. All of the STBG and HERF 12R are programmed to the full amounts in the years that they're available. So with that, let me first ask, are there any questions or concerns about this process that people would like to put out there?
This is Robin. I just have one question on the current program column. Does that include all currently programmed funding outside of RTA even? So the HERF 12.6 that's not included in 12R and impact fees and all of the rest of those, or just the RTA funds?
I'm glad you raised that. This only includes HERF 12R, or those dollars that are committed during the 20 to 26 timeframe. 12.6, such as, if you look down and look at Silverbell, you'll see that there's only $1.84 million shown in fiscal 21, when in fact there's another, I think, $8+ million of 12.6 that's also available in the current fiscal year. This was only intended to try to demonstrate that we're meeting the ballot amount. We recognize that there may be other funds that are in the current program that are not reflected in that in this column here.
So to be
So
clear,
thank you for
there's
that
no,
question.
yes, and just to clarify further, so from this spreadsheet, there's no real way to have, for this body to understand if these projects are fully funded, because we don't really know what the full funding picture is from this particular spreadsheet necessarily.
Well, this shows the full funding to the ballot amount. And this is reflective of the information that was in the existing 20 to 24 tip as manipulated by our recommendation.
But the ballot amount, I'm sorry to interrupt, the ballot amount did also include other funding sources that were not specifically RTA funding sources, but others, and those are not included here.
That's a very good point. We have not reflected certainly the impact fees, with a few exceptions. We did identify impact fees for the Sunset Road project, and I think I would certainly be interested in hearing what impact fees the jurisdictions can bring to bear at this time. We have not previously programmed. If we had not previously programmed them, they're not in here.
Thank you.
But we'd certainly, that's a good point. If you can share with us the years of development impact fee funding availability and when you would want to program them, we'll certainly enter this in, and this will become part of the working document as we're moving forward.
Jim, this is Catherine with FEMA County.
Yeah, Catherine.
Could you scroll back down to the bottom where we can kind of take a look at what the fiscal constraint funding regulations were?
Yeah.
That it doesn't appear that those match what was recommended. So can you explain what the difference is between, in 2022, we recommended 21 million for 12.6 and 21.5 for STB.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned it. You'll find that these numbers are $350,000 short of that dollar amount. One of the things that was brought to my attention is that there are programs that, and such as the Transportation Youth by Art or Art by Youth program that are normally paid for out of the 12.6 funds, or in this case, the 12R funds. So we reduced the 12R program by that amount. And so the STBG is also representative of the total allocation less the programmatic charges.
Mm-hmm. And just to clarify, HERF 2.6 is not considered a regional fund, and it's not under the same requirements of the RTA board action that regional funds go to RTA projects?
The 2.6 is not reflected here. I know we're in the midst of working through what the 2.6 balance is. We've certainly heard loud and clear from you that that's of interest to you, and we're working to get that nailed down. That is not shown in this spreadsheet at this time.
Is it under the same RTA board action as the rest of the regional funds, though, in terms of its use on RTA projects, or is it not under that same policy?
I don't believe it is under the same, although I would have to do some more research into that. At the time we did it, it was not our intention to incorporate that, but I'll yield to Jamie on this, who's more knowledgeable than I on this particular point.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. DeGrood, Catherine, Ms. Skinner. And I'm jumping in just because we had a conversation about this recently with Mr. Mohimi, our executive director, who confirmed that the HERF 2.6 is not subject to that policy of applying those HERF funds to supplement or supplant dollars for RTA commitments. So the 2.6 is not, because it's to be used on state facilities, and we rely on ADOT's recommendation. That is why it is not subject to the same policy.
And I would add that as I was developing the recommendation to the board, I did not include that the 2.6 in that calculus, if you will, when we were looking to try to find ways to meet the gap between the amount of funding that we felt we would realize after we got our Eller estimates and the amount that was in the commitment by ballot.
I just have one last question.
Mm-hmm.
When the calendar for TIP development was presented to TPC and management committee, it said that on October 6th, we'd be reviewing the draft project list. So in actuality, we're reviewing an RTA project list, which is not comprehensive, and we can't really take a look at constraints or any of the other requirements for TIP. So do you feel like this is consistent with?
We had committed to developing the program we understand that this is largely a program that is to deliver the final years of the RTA plan, and that's what we're attempting to do with this.
If I may jump in, I think that's a good observation, Ms. Skinner. I think we were general in terms of what we were anticipating for this meeting, but since that time we had more discussions about the process and what makes sense, and so we are at a point where we know that today is really focused on the RTA project list, and that's where my remarks earlier in the meeting were to discuss how we'll be treating different project lists at separate times. So we tried to give ourselves some flexibility and say subject to change, because we're trying to adjust our process to accommodate what we're hearing from you, and also just as we move along and fine tune what makes the most sense. So.
Hi, Jamie, this is Anna. So then today is the RTA list meeting. Will there be other TIP subcommittee meetings scheduled to review the other project funding meetings lists? And then at one point, we'll put all the lists together and we'll review the entire program. Will those be separate meetings?
At this point, we haven't scheduled more TIP subcommittee meetings. However, I think we are open to feedback. I think this process is somewhat dynamic as we hear from you. So at this point, we were anticipating taking 2 lists, hopefully, to TPC in December. That would be the Transit Working Group's recommendation, as well as the RTA project list, and then an ADOT project list in January. And I think we would have all of those lists in early 2021, all combined, is the goal. However, if we're hearing that there's a need to have more discussions at the TIP subcommittee level, again, I think we're open to feedback, but I'll defer to Mr. DeGrood, Mr. Atler, and others on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, I would echo what Jamie said is, and that is that we know that this is going to be a difficult process this year, particularly as we start dealing with those projects that are seeking additional funding to be able to build the current scope. And we're just going to have to work at this one step at a time and stay after it until we get a tip that we can bring for the regional council next spring. Anyway, with that, I think unless there are other questions, what I'd like to recommend or propose that we do is start going through individual projects. And the first project that we have is RTA 01, which is the Twin Peaks I-10 to La Cañada project. First phase of that is complete. There's currently $755,000 that are in the fiscal 21 tip. That's rollover from the prior phase of the project. We also have funding that we're recommending that we begin putting out in fiscal 23 to begin the design. We know that the town of Oro Valley, the town of Marana is also seeking other additional funds through the legislature for right-of-way and such. And we have recommended that we put $2 million of RTA funds in for design in 23, $4 million of HERF 12R in 24 for right-of-way, and then the remaining funds over fiscal years 25 and 26. And would like the town's opinion on this. We also have, I would note that there are already identified monies that would show up in the environment and economic vitality portion of the plan that would be put in alignment with the construction phases of this project. With that, Mr. Brand, do you have thoughts or comments on this? And is this a project that could absorb STPG funds if they became available?
Mr. Groot, unfortunately, it will not be able to absorb STP funds or STPG funds. We went through great pains to work with the Corps of Engineers to make sure that the wash crossings were all considered each as individual nationwides, whatever that term would be, but it does not have an individual permit for the entire project. So each crossing is considered its own nationwide permit. So it is not a federalized project because of that. So we are not able to accept federal funds. In terms of programming 12R amounts in lieu of RTA amounts, that really is the discretion of RTA and PAG based on the directions of regional council. The project is underfunded, and that's probably going to be a common refrain today. We have been given verbal assurances to not worry that projects will be made whole. Not seeing it officially in any paper or any programming at this time. Everything is always programmed to the ballot amount, and we know that the ballot amounts are short. The town is committed to making sure interference. The town is committed to the ballot amount that we had assigned to us. The amount that was spent in phase one basically leaves us with, I believe, approximately somewhere between a $16 and a $17 million obligation. We are preparing for that to be able to start building those monies so that they are ready to go in 2025 when we think we're going to construction.
Okay.
We're going to need additional monies.
Yeah, at this point, are you prepared for us to put $16 million into 2025 as local?
I would not all be in 2025. Some of it would be in 2026. You know, it'd be a cash flow issue for us as we go through what's going to be a 1 to 2 year process. We'll have to get with you and let you know how much money we think we would have assembled by 2025 and how much to put in 2026.
Okay, if you could send that to us, that would be great. We'll go ahead and incorporate that into the program. Okay. Next project would be Silver Bell. This is currently a town of, or rather a city of Tucson project. They're the lead agency on the phase that was completed and the phase that is currently in design and in archaeology. We have, as I mentioned, 1.842 million in the current fiscal 21 tip. That is a rollover of funds. There's also $8+ million of 12.6 that is also rolled over. What we're showing is that for the next 2 years, this will largely be absorbing the 12.6 and doing the archaeology work, and then begin moving into construction in fiscal 23. We're showing a blend of 12R and RTA with funding continuing on into fiscal 24 and 25. We recognize that there is another phase to the north that is one that is multi-jurisdictional. I believe there may be portions of it that are in the corporate limits of the city of Tucson, but there are other jurisdictions involved as well, namely the town of Marana on the very north end, and then the unincorporated lands in Pima County in between the El Camino del Cerro intersection. Robin, do you want to start off the conversation on this particular project?
Well, the project is nearly complete with design and right-of-way acquisition so that it will be this next phase ready to start construction at the point when the archaeology is complete.
Okay.
When do we expect that to be done, Robin?
Archaeology is one of those things that I have never seen a great estimate on.
So are we comfortable with waiting until 2023 for construction?
I think so, yes.
Okay. And then when would we start the next phase of design? Because this is, I mean, we have money spread out over the 4 years. Does that make sense for us?
Well, the next segment is primarily outside of the city of Tucson. And that segment is, to coin a phrase that Keith started, very underfunded.
Okay. And is there enough funding in there for us to get done?
There's enough funding for this next phase to be completed, yes.
Thank you.
at this point in time. I mean, who knows what by 2023 if the prices will go up. That might have to be readjusted at that point.
Hi, this is Anna. So my question is, the total cost shown in the project description of 69,283,000, is that just for the segment from Grant to Ina? Or do we know what that total cost?
I am not familiar with how that was arrived at.
Okay. And then the money that's shown then in the next 826, that is the amount that's needed to cover the construction from Goree to Camino del Cerro?
That is the next phase of work, which the city of Tucson is in design on, and that we would expect to begin funding in fiscal 23, the construction of.
So will that money have to move to 23? I guess I'm trying to, or will it be spread out over all those years?
Right now, it's shown as being spread out over those years. I would expect at least a 24-month construction period for a project of this magnitude, and depending upon what point in time within fiscal year 23 it's initiated, it could span even into fiscal 25. But I don't have clarity on that myself, and it sounds like to some extent we're waiting on completion of the archaeological treatment. I know that the treatment plan is in its final throes, if not already approved. I know that was something that we were weighing in on at the beginning of the summer. I also know that there is an archaeological component that will be necessary for the northern phase as well, which I don't know has been initiated yet. That's something that I think we probably need to have a conversation amongst the partners about who will lead that effort, knowing that the city of Tucson has led the first two phases, but the northern phases are less city-centric and more of interest perhaps to Marana and Pima County.
Okay, so I guess on that one, we'll wait on a better schedule from the archaeology and then see how that money needs to be moved around to accommodate that construction.
Yeah, at this point, we have some flexibility in terms of the ability to accelerate funds if we need to from fiscal 26 forward. But that's where we've, in essence, placed the funding, recognizing that the archaeology will probably be fairly time consuming. As I understand it, the further north you go, the more archaeological features may be present or may not be known yet to be present. I know this would be going through the section of Sunset Road that was recently completed by Pima County, and I know that was there were quite significant archaeological features discovered there, and that had not been known prior to that project.
Okay, so however, the city's projects, you're only doing, Robin, the archaeological clearance up to Camino del Cerro, right?
Correct.
So that then funding that's programmed here is just for Camino del Cerro, up to Camino del Cerro.
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments or wish to see any funds moved around? Is this a project that could be federalized, given the amount of archaeological detail and the fact that we've got a programmatic agreement and other things in place on this already?
My belief is that although it has enough time to be federalized, it would probably cost more if it was federalized.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anything else anybody wants to contribute on this particular project? Here Hearing none, let's move on to Project 8, RTA 8, which is Sunset Road from I-10 to River Road. I know this is another project that has funding needs. What we have shown in the draft financial plan is that we would be employing STBG funds in the amount of the remaining commitment, RTA commitment to the project in fiscal 22. I know that I've seen some back and forth between Anna and you and your team and ADOT about it being in 23, possibly 22. Is this a project, or do you feel that you could use the STBG in fiscal year 22?
Hi, Jim. As you mentioned, we're still waiting to hear back from ADOT in terms of their schedule and what year we would need to program that construction. Project can take, as the first two have mentioned, it's very underfunded for what we need to deliver. It's already federalized, so obviously it can use all the federal money that is available. And the other outstanding point from our conversation on this recently was the potential of HERF 2.6 on it. So we look forward to that meeting that you were going to set up and invite us to with ADOT to discuss those options.
Okay. One thing I would note is that we do have on the following project, which is basically matching up to the Sunset Road project. That is the Ina Road to Ruthroff Road project. We are showing STBG over 2 years on that. And if there is a need to delay the funding on fiscal 22, would ADOT have any concern about accelerating the funding into fiscal 22 in a like amount to what's in Sunset?
This is Rod.
Yeah,
Say that again. You want to know about accelerating STGB?
Yeah.
For
Right now,
Sunset?
not so much accelerating, but actually programming. We're showing programming of funds, STBG funds in fiscal 22 and fiscal 23 on the I-10 Ina to Ruthroff project. If the county needs us to delay the STBG from fiscal 22 to fiscal 23, could we move that like amount out of the ADOT STBG in fiscal 23, just move that forward?
Yeah, I don't really see too much of an issue with that.
Okay. All right.
Yep, this is Anna. Actually, the state tip shows all of the STPG, PAG STPG in fiscal year 22 of the Ina to Ruthroff project.
Right. Yeah, that's, again, that is the current tip. This would be the new tip that we would be developing for 22 to 26.
No, well, right. So, I mean, ADOT's current draft tip shows that STPG funding all in fiscal year 22. That's a tip that they'll approve sometime October, November, the end of this month or early November. So I'm just curious if we needed to show the same to match.
I mean, we could certainly. What we're doing now would affect the next tip cycle for ADOT. I have no concern about moving the 5388 to fiscal year 23 if that's what Pima County would like to do, and then move that like amount forward, which would be more consistent with what you're reporting on the is in the ADOT STIP.
All right, so the ADOT STIP only, of course, has the I-10 Ina to Ruthroff widening project on their program.
Correct.
And they show all the funding for that project in fiscal year 22.
That's my understanding, yes.
Yes. So, and I'm gonna say when they take our project, the Sunset I-10 River, and combine it with theirs, this is one of the responses we're waiting for from ADOT is whether that Sunset Road project needs to show all our regional funding also in fiscal year 22, or if it can be shown in 23 because construction of it actually won't happen until then. So we're waiting for that response before we start moving it over. My question is just, I guess, does it matter that the PAG tip is showing the STPG in 2 separate years while the state tip is showing it all in 1 year on the INUT to Roof Rock Widening project? Does that matter? Does that affect the constraints if our PAG tip doesn't match the ADOT tip?
So this is Rod. Can I chime in a bit? Jim and Anna?
Yes, certainly.
So what I'm hearing is, Anna, the one that you're talking about is the tentative plan. So isn't that the plan that PAG is expecting ADOT to deliver before January? Once it's approved, goes through its process, it will then be implemented into this program, and then all of these will be updated.
That's my take on this, is that, you know, we're working towards the next plan development cycle. And so we would have to have concurrency between the 2 plans when we adopt it at the end of the current fiscal year.
So then until that is finally adopted and forwarded officially from ADOT, you're going to be required to display it this way at this point.
We're showing it in this fashion as we're moving forward towards developing the tip, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just so I understand, I'm sorry for the confusion on my end. ADOT's revised tip will move forward, get approved before the end of this calendar year.
Correct.
And it shows on the INUT to Roof Rock project, all the funding, all the STPG funding, all the PAG STPG funding in fiscal year 22. We currently have a draft plan that we're reviewing and working on that's going to be approved in the spring. Shows the STPG in fiscal years 22 and 23. Are we saying that once ADOT approves their plan, we will then modify this sheet that we have before the spring approval or after the spring approval to match ADOT's STIP?
We will work with ADOT to develop a STIP that is concurrent between the PAG plan and the ADOT STIP that is for the period 22 to 26.
Sometime before spring.
We'll be developing it in the spring to get it into alignment. I don't know, Jamie, you're looking like you want to pop in.
Well, I don't know if it would help, but, and Mark and Rod, please feel free to jump in, but I don't know if everyone knows, we're kind of in an unusual circumstance with the ADOT 5-year program. Typically, that is adopted in, I want to say, June timeframe, but that was pushed back for adoption of the fiscal year 21 to 25 5-year construction plan program to late October. But what, yeah, so usually this would have been, that program would have been approved in June. Instead, it's delayed, and they're going to approve it hopefully later this month. But what, as Jim is saying, is we're actually looking at the next program, and I believe that next program will still follow the typical process of going through a statewide approach and then adoption by the State Transportation Board in June. So we're actually working on that next 5-year program in terms of this project list. So I don't know if that helps at all, but just wanted to chime in.
So then let me ask it this way. ADOT approves their plan 21 to 25, and it shows all the PAG STP in fiscal year 22. Boom. We move forward with our approval of our 22 to 26 plan, and we show the PAG STIP in 2 separate years, 22 and 23, and that's okay. And then when ADOT starts working on their 22 to 26 plan, will they have to then change that STP to match ours?
That's the plan.
And
That-
Mark, is that consistent with your understanding? Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. So when, for that next cycle, for the 22 to 26, if that's what, through the PEGS programming process, then that will be incorporated into ADOT's 5-year program for their next 22 to 26 plan, which will be approved hopefully next June. It'll be on the same cycle. So that's what will happen.
So as long as then, so that's where my confusion comes in with if ADOT needs to have all the funding for the project in the year that they advertise or authorize the project to go, that won't necessarily be the case because our PAG money will be shown in 23. And if that's okay, I'm just trying to find out if that's okay.
Well, I think that's still the outstanding question we're waiting for from our discussions a couple of weeks ago on it. At least that's what I heard, what you
Yeah.
were saying at the beginning of that.
And I guess depending on that answer, then we'll have to modify either PAG's or ADOT's program before either one gets approved.
There's a possibility.
Okay.
You know, I think one of the things that we've been working to try to do is show the STBG on sunset as early as possible, unless you would like to see it delayed.
I don't think that we want to see it delayed. The STP that's shown on sunset, that is the RTA allotment, is that correct?
That's correct.
But if there was available RTA funding extra somewhere, that could be added on there and we could still use that STP.
That's the policy question that we need to raise, and I expect that we will begin dealing with that. Once we have this list approved, you know, my hope is to present this to the technical management committee and start grinding on how do we go through a process that identifies, you know, how we would go about augmenting funds as deemed appropriate by the RTA board.
Yes, that would be great. Knowing the availability of total RTA funding will be helpful with that.
Okay. Have we covered 8 and 9 sufficiently for the county and ADOT's concerns? And are there other parties that have any interest or want to comment on that?
This is Rod. I do want to comment a little bit on the Ina to Ruthroff section. So we are moving forward. We've got a designer on board and we're soon going to be starting the rescoping project. So the expectation at this point is to have this project designed and ready for advertisement and construction by the close of fiscal year 22. That's the current plan.
Okay, great.
I have one more question. I'm sorry, I just remembered, and maybe ADOT can help me. What is the state match funding? Rod, where does that come from? Do you know?
If it's state match, it just comes from state, our funding, ADOT's fundings. What's that, Mark?
Yeah, it's from the State Transportation Fund. That's where those state match dollars come from.
Okay, we're trying to find a definition.
This is Robin. If I may ask a question, is this the only one that's not one of the RTA project list projects?
I'm sorry, on which?
The Ina to Ruthroff on I-10? It's not on the RTA list, correct?
Yeah, this was something that we agreed with ADOT to. They were accelerating funds that we basically were contributing funds to this project and to Ruthroff, then move forward with the Ruthroff TI with very little funding from the RTA. So we're making it up to them on this particular project. The RTA Ruthroff TI project had $59.4 million of funding by ballot, and this is a way that we're contributing towards it.
Jim, to that point, I think one thing for me, this is Catherine from the county, one thing that would be really helpful in this discussion and our commitment to meeting that ballot amount is if we had the prior years before 2022, because we have the benefit now, we see everything to the end of the RTA program. So what happened those first 15 years? And as we talk about hitting the ballot amount, I know that seems to be the concern for roadway element projects. It seems quite a lesser extent that that's a commitment to the categorical. So that would be a really helpful exercise, I think, for seeing the overall vision of what the RTA has done.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. If there's no objection, what I'd like to do is move on to First Avenue, Orange Grove to Ina. This is a project that was a fourth period project. Again, it's one that there have been no recent cost estimates developed on. One could argue that perhaps it's underfunded. It's also a project that at one point in time, subsequent to the vote, Pima County downplanned the corridor and its major streets and routes plan. We're showing $700,000 in fiscal year 24 to commence the design, and then the funding equally distributed between 25 and 26 for construction up to the ballot amount of $6,556,000.
Hi, Jim. This is Anna. Yeah, we have not started working on this project. 2024 is a good start for us. And then we want to see how we can look at the scope without and still meet the intent of the RTA. So,
okay.
We will assign a PM to start working on this one.
Okay. So sounds like we're okay with these numbers, and we can move on to First Avenue North. I'm sorry, the other First Avenue.
Yes, I don't have anything else for the Pima County one.
Okay, great. RTA 14, First Avenue Grant to River. We currently have $11 million of funding in the fiscal 21 TIP. At this point in time, I know that the city has been looking at options. They have not drawn down on RTA funds as yet. They've been using local funds, and at this point, we don't have an IGA yet. But that's something that would be the next step in order to draw those funds. We have shown the balance of that funding distributed through the latter parts of the plan, beginning with a $7.65 million in fiscal year 24, followed by $33.4 million of RTA in fiscal 25 and $19.3 million in fiscal 26. Know that there's still some discussion about what the project will ultimately look like, and that's a conversation that would need to be discussed also at the board level as well if there's deviations from the current scope. So I will put that out there. Does that seem like a reasonable place to put that? And I asked primarily my colleagues from the city.
All right, this is Robin. It seems fairly reasonable. Just to put it out there again, though, this one, if it goes to the full 6-lane widening that is described, would be underfunded.
Understood. Okay. Is this a project that if we needed to place federal funds on it, would this be a project that the city would consider federalizing?
I think it would cost more to federalize it, and I believe since it goes through several low-income areas, it could be a difficult project to federalize.
Okay. All right. Are we good with moving beyond this particular project?
Diana, did you have any comments? Okay, we're okay.
Okay, great. Let's move on then to project 15, which is Grant Road Railroad Underpass Reconstruction. I know that's a project that has been the subject of a lot of recent investigation work and kind of some rethinking of it. We're showing $2.9 million of funding in the current fiscal year, but then dropping it down to fairly low levels of funding for the next 3 years, and then investing heavily in it in fiscal 25 and 26, and using STBG funds on those, with 15.9 million in, or actually 16 million, almost 16 million in fiscal 25, followed by another $9 million in 26. I know that this does not fully program the RTA dollars. This is one where we were operating off of the last cost estimate when we were looking at dropping tubes in on either side of the current underpass. There's still probably another 5 million or so that would be available to bring it up to the full ballot amount if necessary.
All right, this is Robin. I think that if you pushed it out that far, it could be federalized. I also think that it could eat up the entire ballot amount if it becomes federalized, but that cost would have to remain to be seen.
Okay. Just to
So,
give everybody oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is Diana. Robin, do we want to push this out? Because I thought we were kind of ready to roll on this one. And we've been working really hard on a design. We're ready to move it into engineering. We've been working with the community on that. Do we really want to push this one out?
You are correct. It would be difficult to push this one out.
Yeah.
Because the community may take that as a break in faith.
Yeah, that would be my concern. And I'm sorry, I gave a really great overview of First Avenue, but I was muted the whole time, not realizing it. So I am going to buy one of those T-shirts that says "Unmute, please."
We can roll back to it if you'd like to. I mean, there's nothing.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's please continue on First Avenue.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. I'm in agreement with everything that Robin said. I think this one would be very difficult to federalize, given that we would have some environmental justice issues that we would have to really dig into to get over those humps. And I think it would get very costly. But are you also recommending to push First Avenue out as well, Jim?
First Avenue, we are showing it in the last 3 years of the TIP primarily.
But I thought we were supposed, I mean, I know we're finishing up the environmental assessment that we're doing right now, or I'm sorry, the feasibility assessment on it. And then we would be ready to take that back to our board and to RTA with our recommendation on how to proceed forward. But I thought the dollars were supposed to be like available next year to start moving that project forward. Am I wrong? Help me with my memory here.
Yeah, I don't recall us having a conversation about it being moving that quickly. I know we did indicate that we had $11 million in the current plan that would stay and continue to roll to fund the early year design. And then as we moved into fiscal year 23 and 23, 25, or 24, 25, and 26, that would be where the large blocks of funding would be available for the project.
So Robin, help me, because my memory is failing me. What year were we supposed to have First Avenue programmed?
I don't think we had a specific conversation about exactly when, but
Okay.
we're just now ending up the feasibility report. And so then design usually takes about 2 years. That 11 million has the potential, if the scope decreases, to cover the necessary right-of-way acquisitions as well as design. But again, if the larger scope becomes a requirement, it would be sorely underfunded.
No, I hear you and I agree with that and I understand it. Okay, all right. Then I'm good with Grant Avenue. We can move back to Granton Road.
Okay.
Underpass.
Okay.
So that one, Jim's a bit concerning for me, the way it's spread out over the 5 years. And I really don't want to push that one out, I have to tell you. We have the community on board. We've been doing a lot of conversation. We have a conception that we worked on, and the conversation that we're having with the community has been very favorable. And I would really like to continue and moving that one forward. And it's also something that our council member in that ward is watching and looking at very closely as well. So I have a bit concerned about pushing that one out.
I would say
We do feel with the redesign that we're going to be bringing back and recommending, we will be able to do it with the current ballot budget amount. Correct, Robin?
Yes, in fact, if it's not federalized, chances are we can do it for under the current ballot amount. I would also say that, to jump on your bandwagon there, Diana, the longer we push it out, the more likely it becomes that some of the community members would be more likely to say negative things.
Yes.
Based upon schedule.
So that one, I think we need to dig in a little bit deeper, Jim. We're just not comfortable with the way it's presented.
Okay. I know, one of the things that we're looking at is timing on multiple projects. And this was a project that we had hoped to put STBG funding on. We do have those dollars in that year. We're going to need to find a home for those STBG dollars. If we move them off of the grant UPRR reconstruction. So I think what we'll do at this point is kind of leave project 16 pending and maybe circle back to it in a few minutes, if we may, after we've looked at the other projects that are in the plan.
Okay.
Okay. Between the two, we've got roughly 24, almost $25 million. So
yeah, and I think Robin, if like Robin said, if we federalize it, we'll probably spend the entire budget amount. If we don't federalize it, we'll probably come in under budget.
Okay. Okay. Downtown links. Again, we know that the city is looking for additional funds. There are $507,000 that have not been programmed to date. We're proposing that it be programmed in fiscal 22. That would zero out the budget allocation or the ballot amount that the RTA had committed to that project.
So I have a comment. The number on the far right is not the full amount that is in the tip to date. So I'm thinking that there's some funding sources missing here. And I'm thinking that one of them, of course, is the HERF 2.6, which is not included.
Correct.
But I believe there is also some 12.6 that was in addition to.
Right. There's no 2.6, no 12, no 12.6. Prior to the commitment to the RTA plan. So,
right. So
anything programmed prior to 2020 enrolled would still be available, but is not reflected in that $27.198 million. Nor is any local fund or flood control funds or anything like that.
Why would that be? Why would you not want to show it all, Jim? I mean, should this not be representative of the current tip? Should we not have this kind of mirrored?
The only reason, I mean, I put that
I
in.
find it a bit confusing.
Yeah. Actually, I thought I added that column just to try to help reduce confusion, because people would want to look at what they have currently in the current program. So I guess maybe I should have added more lines to this, but yeah, there are additional funds in there, and I think really what we need to do is focus on a subsequent discussion about the funding gap that is going to be really kind of outside of the RTA ballot commitment discussion. It's going to be the beyond the ballot commitment discussion that we need to have. That at this point in time, I'm just trying to get up to the ballot now.
Okay. But even the current program is not accurate, so, right.
Well, and
So I have,
this one's fairly underfunded, sorry.
so the shortfall in the downtown links, I guess we need to make sure we're still having that conversation, Jim. And I haven't heard much about it, so I think I won't bore everybody here on the meeting, but I think we need to round back and make sure we're having that conversation.
No disagreement.
Robin, do you have any issues with downtown links as it's presented?
No, just to, as far as I am aware, this is where it is with those funding sources. There is, again, some 12.6 and some 2.6 that is more than what this current program number is. This 507 appears to be the right number to get up to the ballot amount. And then also it is sorely underfunded. And it's already under construction.
Yep. Okay. We will circle back to that. But right now what we're trying to do is get to that ballot amount, and I think we've got that with the 507.
Yes.
We're moving on then to RTA 18, which is Grant Road, Oracle to Swan. That's a project that I know we're in heavily into right-of-way. I received updated information from the team on dollar amounts as to when they would be necessary. We currently have $28.3 million in the fiscal 21 tip. I know I've approved some recent draws on that, so I know it's not that right now, but that informs the reason why we are only showing 4.2 million in this fiscal year. But then we bump up to 20 million in the next 2 years as we move from right of way to construction. And then we have we close out the amount with $8.979 million in fiscal 25. We again know that this is a project that we'll be looking for additional funding so that the scope can be delivered as presented.
Assuming for a moment that the right-of-way acquisition will go a little more slowly than the right-of-way experts have told us, then this funding should work. That's for phase 3-4, just with the understanding that phase 5-6, although under design at this time, is going to have a severe shortfall and cannot be constructed for the ballot amount.
We've been surprised. Okay. I did give a little more clarity to 22nd Street with the different sources of funds. I didn't think to do it on downtown links, but I can show that in the current program for 22nd Street, Project 19, in fiscal 21, we have $27.3 million of 12.6 and RTA funds, another $9.212 million of Pima County 97 bond funding, and $250,000 of 12.6 that kind of that legacy programming. In addition to that, we're showing 6.45 million of 12R in fiscal 22, 10.247 million of RTA funds in fiscal 22, and $7.7 million of addition of RTA funds in fiscal 23. Robin, you did share with me some information about funding needs on the order of, I think, $64 million through fiscal 24. This comes up a little short and a little ahead of schedule. I think we're about 3 million short based on that number. One of the questions I would ask is, are there Tucson impact fee funds that can be brought to bear? I think the ballot called for 3 million of impact fees to be coming from Tucson over the life of the 22nd Street project, and I guess I'd ask you to take a look at that. If those have already been exhausted, then we probably need to look at bringing some additional funds forward from fiscal 25 and 26.
Currently, 1.65 million has already been expended against the project for the first phase.
Okay, so we have, is it fair for me to put one in on 23?
Yes. It's 1.655 has already been expended.
Okay. Okay.
And Robin, this project we're getting ready to put out to bid, correct?
As soon as we get the railroad agreement finalized, we'll be ready to go out to bid.
Okay. And when do we expect that?
I don't have a date certain, but the last I heard, we would be able to advertise next fiscal year.
The beginning of the fiscal year?
Yeah, well, I was thinking late 21, early 22.
So, because these are have the county bonds on it, and they would like us to at least start spending them down or
Right.
try to get them spent by the end of the fiscal year. So that's June. So
That's the end of, well, to double check with Catherine, I believe that's the end of calendar 23. Is that right, Catherine?
I'm thinking it was still 22, but I have to go back to that letter too right now.
Right.
But for sure, we'd like to spend them as soon as possible.
Right. Well, the way it looks now, we'd be spending it in FY22.
That would be good. I have a quick question on this one. Did the majority of the RTA funding get spent on the Keno 22nd Street structure?
Yes.
Okay.
That's where the that is, if you'll recall, that was originally going to be Pima County bond funded to the tune of $10 million. At the time, the bond funding was not available, and we arranged to move the bond funding to the viaduct and accelerate RTA funding on the Keno intersection.
Okay.
Okay, so I took the money out of fiscal 25 and accelerated it. So that should give us up the additional $3 million that you were looking for based upon the email you sent me,
With the
or
current
that Austin sent to you when you copied to me.
Right.
Okay. All right, we are going to have some additional funds of 12.6 to program in fiscal 25, likely pull it off of some other project. Pull it off of RTA in a similar amount. Looking at Project 20, Barraza Aviation Parkway Extension. That's a project that we're showing STBG funding going forward on. That's a project that I'm a little concerned might be premature in terms of our funding availability or our funding. And I'd look to our colleagues at ADOT to kind of opine on that. Is that appropriately timed? This was originally identified for design and right-of-way preservation. That's how it was captioned in the RTA plan. Rod, do you or Mark have any thoughts on that?
This is Mark. I don't, I was hoping Rod could chime in. Did we lose Rod?
No, I'm still here. I'm sorry. You're going to have to refresh me here.
Rod, we have a financial commitment. The RTA ballot included $19.6 million of funding for design and right-of-way preservation for the Barraza Aviation Parkway extension to the east. We're showing it beginning to be funded in fiscal 23, with the balance of the funding, the largest portion of the funding in fiscal 24, and then a small amount of funding in fiscal 25. And my question to you is this appropriately timed?
But it's out in the latter years of the plan. So I think that's one of the discussions along with Keno Country Club. And I mean, that's the SR210 connection. How much of that is going to be done and whether it's going to be done per the implementation plan that's in the DCR. So I would say leave it at this point.
Okay.
And it'll be adjusted as we narrow down the process and as the region comes to a conclusion about how it's going to be implemented.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. My only concern is just making sure that we don't strand any money. So, okay. Valencia Aho to Mark. This is a Catherine and Anna question. I still show $1 million that is unexpended on this project to get to the ballot amount. Do you foresee a need for this? I've parked it out in 26, but there is no good reason for me to put it there.
Jim, this is Catherine. Anna and I were just talking, that project's substantially complete now. We expect, obviously it's a landscape establishment. That contract will be open for the next year. But we expect that any money we would need would be either in this current fiscal year with a little rollover into 2022. So I think that might just be savings on the overall project. But we can verify that with you. Definitely in 2026, we don't have any plans to go back and touch anything again on that corridor.
No new intersections, huh?
Right.
Okay. All right. Very good. That's good to know. I've parked it there. If we can release it, that would be great. We're still showing 3.84 million in the current fiscal year. I know we've been nibbling away at that through recent invoices. Next project is project 22, the Irvington TI with I-19. This is a project that we had hoped to do in conjunction with the I-19 Irvington intersection. We're showing funding in fiscal 22 and fiscal 23 that would be coming from STBG. We've got the distribution of federal funding as or state funding, federal funding that is in the current or was in the STIP. And just wanted to touch bases, make sure that's that's consistent with everybody's interests, wishes, and capabilities. The way the project is described in the RTA ballot is as improvements east and west of the TI. So this would be work that we would hope that ADOT would do in conjunction with the TI work itself, but the adjacent intersections.
I'm sorry, this is Robin. I have a quick comment. When I look at the description, it says improve intersections, provide access management east of I-19. So we were thinking that was only east because based upon the project list, it calls it out as Santa Cruz River east of I-19.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing on my language here as well. Let me confirm that.
So that's what I have been telling people. I think if we go east and west.
Hang on, let me just take a quick look at the
So I guess it's the Santa
administrative
Cruz
code.
River that gets us west, right?
Yeah, Santa Cruz is west.
But it goes all the way to the Santa Cruz River. So it's not just the portion exactly around the interchange.
If I look at the administrative code says improve intersections and street traffic movement on Irvington Road on the east and west sides of Interstate 19.
Okay, thank you.
So there is, and benefits, it says improve the efficiency of intersections on Irvington on both sides of Interstate 19. And correct sight distance safety concerns, provides good and safe access for bicyclists and pedestrians. Those are the benefits that are in the administrative code. So I think we've got the latitude to spend money on both sides.
I just want to make sure it goes all the way to the Santa Cruz River.
Okay.
On the west side.
Okay. ADOT have any concerns about coupling this into their project?
No, we don't have any concerns at all. I'm just trying to confirm exactly what year Irvington is in the tentative plan. I'm still looking it up. But we won't have any concerns with coupling it with our project at all, I don't think, because Irvington, I believe, is still in the tentative plan. Mark, do you know what year that is off the top of your head?
I don't. I can try and find it here real quick.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing.
So are we talking about on ADOT's DIP, it's I-19 Irvington TI shown in fiscal years 22, 23, and 24.
Yeah, I just got to see what time, which one is the C and which one is the D.
Oh, the
D should be the first one for design.
construction is shown in 23.
Yeah, so that would be the year that we would have to have the funding obligated for any of your projects, any of the RTA projects would be in 23. So that's within that time frame. So I think it would work well.
Okay. And I will change the C on the $758,000 of SDBG in 22 to D. Okay. All right. Irvington or Valencia Road I-19 to Alvernon. This is a project that we've got parked out in the late years of the plan. We've identified it as drawing down federal funds. At this point, it is identified on the ballot as being access control and intersection improvements. I guess the only thing I've heard in terms of any specific discussion about this project is related to the new access points that are proposed for or the new intersection that had been proposed for the Air National Guard. Although I don't think this is so specific that it has to be spent there on that intersection. That's just the only thing I've heard discussed. This is funding that's available for that project. It is a project that has a very broad and open to interpretation scope. My presumption is that this would be the city of Tucson that would be doing the work.
Yes, that is our intent, and I don't believe we want to put it all in one intersection. I think the idea is to distribute it along the entire way so that ultimately the traffic flow is much better and encompasses all of the necessary attributes to get everybody moving through here.
Correct.
Okay. Any adjustments need to be made to what's presented?
I don't have any. Robin, do you?
I do not.
Okay, great. Moving on to RTA 25. Valencia Road, Kolb to Houghton. We're showing that in, I know that there's $5.8 million in current program. I believe that that's partially at least being consumed by some aspect of the intersection to the east project that built the first 3/4 of a mile to the east of Kolb, although I believe a substantial amount of that money still remains for and available and being used for design. We're showing $2 million in 23 for construction, another $7 million in 6.9 million in 24 and 5.2 million in 25. And this has a pretty heady amount of development impact fee obligations associated with it.
So this one originally had 4 million in Pima County impact fees and 5 million in Tucson impact fees.
Yeah, I believe the city annexed a fairly substantial portion of the property that that had been in unincorporated Pima County.
This project will then probably come up short.
Yeah, that's kind of been our working understanding, is that at least the impact fee funding would be very difficult to secure early on in the 5-year period. I know there's activity out there, but
I have a question because I wasn't here when this was originally done, but why were county impact fees dedicated to this project?
It was a project that was multi-jurisdictional.
Okay.
And the county committed impact fees, as did the city of Tucson, for that multi-jurisdictional section of roadway. I believe there's still a small portion of the roadway that is in an unincorporated Pima County, although I don't know the amount. I believe probably 2/3 or better of what was previously unincorporated has been annexed subsequent to the RTA election.
So Anna, is the county still putting the impact fees toward this, even though part of the annexation happened? Would we not carry over those impact fees with the annexation so that we could move the project forward so it wouldn't come up short?
This is Catherine. I'll answer that. Our approach on all the RTA projects, including this one, is that the county spends their impact fees in the unincorporated area. So if we knew the amount of the project and a rough estimate of the cost of the improvements within the unincorporated areas, we do have impact fees to contribute to the project. I just don't know what that value is right now.
Right. We're not far enough in design to give you a very good number. I think I've given you estimates before, but they were, very early.
But Robin, we should go back and look at the annexation and see if there's any language in it that the impact fees that would have been part of this project would carry over with the annexation.
There
might be some language in there. I'm not sure.
There is not.
There is not. No, we shouldn't.
But I mean,
Okay.
this is definitely a conversation we're more than happy to have with you.
Right.
To try to figure out what that
Well, I
dollar
think, yeah, the bottom line is we can't guarantee what the impact fees would be in this project at this time, because we still need to understand exactly what the cost is, and we're very early in design.
So we need to put that on the table. Robin, what's that other street? Anna, I actually sent you an email about it. Y'all are getting ready to move forward. You're using impact fees. There's a small stretch of the city that is like in the middle of it. And I know that there is we have impact fee dollars that we want to apply. We're supposed to have aside. What street is that? Robin, help me. We were gonna give impact fees to the county, and they were gonna build bike lanes, add asphalt, but now they're moving it to a 4-lane.
Is that Houghton south of I-10?
Thank you. Couldn't remember. Anna and Catherine, could we just run back and have a conversation about that? Because the political dynamics has changed, and we would like to partner with y'all on that. So that outside of RTA, can we have a conversation on that?
Sure.
Perfect. Thank you, ladies. Sorry, Jim.
No, that's quite all right. These are discussions that need to take place and don't necessarily need to involve me, so not a problem. In terms of what we have shown in terms of the RTA funding, does this look reasonable and appropriate?
I think it's the best we can do at this point in time, but it's going to have to be worked out better as we move forward.
Yeah, I agree, because this is also an extremely important project for our ward office as well. So just to kind of keep that on everybody's radar.
One thing I would mention is that we did move the timing of this back a couple of years, primarily because it was originally shown coinciding with work on Houghton Road, and we felt that having both projects, both of those main corridors into the Rio Ranch area under construction at the same time would be problematic.
Yep, I always said it would be really good if everybody moved out for about a year so we could get it all done.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, then we'll move on to 22nd Street. This is a project we have very little information on. There's a presumption it's underfunded. The existing roadway, I believe, it might be 4 lanes already for portions of it. This was identified as improved 3- and 4-lane roadway. So I think the eastern section of it had been contemplated as being a 3-lane section, and the western portion of it 4. But I'd have to take a look at the schematics on that. We're showing $700,000 in fiscal 24 to commence design, and 3.25 in fiscal 25, and the balance in 26. The total commitment is 6.06 million, 6.066 million, and I don't recall whether there was an impact fee commitment on that or not.
There was a commitment for impact fees on this one. At this point in time, we have not yet started design, so although I agree that it is probably underfunded, I don't have enough of a design plan to give you any specifics.
Yeah, and I see now you're right, there's a $3 million impact fee commitment to that. Would you want me to park that out in 25 or 26?
Oh, sadly, I can't get into my files during a meeting, so I'll have to let you know what year.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Moving on, we've got then RTA 31, which is Harrison Road from Irvington to Golf Links. I know I've certainly heard a lot from the ward office about that recently. I know that at the time that we looked at this originally with the ballot, we had identified a 4-lane divided section with bridge over the Pantano Wash with a construction or with an estimate of $26.6 million. This project was, if you will, I'd call it a bubble project. They liked the project but couldn't afford it. So, and I believe at the time, one of the members of the Citizens Advisory Committee was Brian Delfs, who was a firefighter, who felt very strongly that this needed at the very least to have all-weather access. So that was what the origins of this project was, to build a bridge over the Pantano and tie it in with the existing infrastructure, with the hopes that someday it would be part of a broader construction when funds were available. We're showing, I don't know why we put it like this, 158,000 in fiscal 24, $1 million in 25, and $5 million in 26. Clearly, that's an inadequate sum for design. Was wondering if you had thoughts on how, is this a reasonable allocation of that commitment?
The overall project is going to be sorely underfunded, even with only a 2-lane bridge, as it's a long bridge. So we have not yet started design, so I can't tell you by how much. I think I've given an estimate before, prior to this, as being more of a $10 to $12 million project, but I can't be certain. I don't remember.
Okay. Understand that we will have to circle back and look at additional cost estimating and look for additional resources to augment this. But at this point, any concern with me moving forward with it shown, the ballot money shown in this fashion?
We'll have to figure out how much the design is going to cost, because 158,000 just seems like a
get you
unrealistically low number.
Okay.
Oh, I've got the answer for 22nd Street, Camino Seco to Houghton. As far as impact fees are concerned, we're showing impact fees at $1 million each in 24, 25, and 26.
Okay, great. Let me see, where did that pop? Let's see, I think, yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. Thank you. And Harrison, what we could probably do without too much difficulty is accelerate the 831 into fiscal 24 to design, if that's something that you would like to do at this time.
I think that's probably a reasonable move. Diana, what do you think?
I'm good with it, Robin.
Okay, and that keeps us balanced. Whoops. Now it's balanced. Had to enter it. Okay, Houghton Road. I know we've got 4.48 million in the current program to augment other regional funds that are being brought to bear on the Marion Cleveland to Valencia phase. We are showing $10 million of 12R in 22 and 18 million of RTA in 23, and and 764 of RTA, which fully takes down all of the remaining funds that are available to the project, presumably for the 22nd Street to Irvington phase of the project. Does that seem reasonable?
That seems reasonable. There, I believe, is an amount of impact fees based
Okay.
on the current estimate from Pima County that we're able to bring to bear on this project, but I don't know which year.
Okay.
Don't know that that county has an amount yet,
Okay. Well,
or a year yet.
okay. I'll just park local there to key to remember that we'll have to circle back to that.
Is that right, Catherine, that there's no sense yet of when that money would be available?
Right, so I mean, our board just approved our new impact fee program that we'll start collecting on January 1st. Our South Houghton project is in this area, so we've committed money to that right now. And so I don't know when, in the next 10 years of all the projects that we have to get done with the impact fee program, it'll be available. I don't know when.
So that's just going to have to be an ongoing conversation.
Okay, understood. The other two things that I have included, these are not RTA projects, ballot projects, but they are projects that we have been doing. We've been putting ongoing funding amounts onto.
Tim,
and yeah.
Can I ask a question on Houghton?
Sure.
So this is the 22nd through Irvington segment. Don't we still have the portion up near Tanca Verde to do? I mean, which other segments are left and where do those show in the program?
There are no other funds available. This fully draws down the remaining ballot. We will have to address the future project to the north of 5th Street. Yeah, 5th to Tanca Verde is the final phase of the project. And at this point in time, it is unfunded. We'll have to identify it as such and see if we can't come up with a path forward on getting that either constructed or deleted, as that's a board policy decision.
Something will have to be constructed, but right now, as everyone can see, it is sorely underfunded, like zero.
Oh yeah, we understand it's totally underfunded. Are there other projects that are not reflected here, nor have we completed them? I think that would be a helpful list to see what we're just not even.
No, actually, this is, I see what you're saying on the multi-phased projects. I think we've touched on the multi-phase projects that have difficult or not or non-existent funding for the final phase. Grant Road is one.
Silverbell.
Tangerine is one. Silverbell is one. And then the Houghton Road last phase is one as well.
And
so
Downtown Links.
Well, Downtown Links that's not an out year. That's
a current year.
Yeah. Projects that are looking for funding, it would be bigger than this.
Right.
I was just talking or trying to address the question that was, do we have last phases that are unfunded that don't even show up here in any meaningful way?
And those would be them, yeah.
This one does not list this lists the 22nd Irvington phase. It does not list the 5th Tanca Verde phase.
Right.
So, Jim, this is on us. So we probably should include all those. This is a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
That finishes the RTA program. So all those other ones that are, even though we've used up all the ballot, I thought we had a commitment to finish the RTA program. And then
we do. This is one of the quirks of Houghton is that we had on some projects we've done like one big project and continued to work off of it, and so it stays as one identified project. In the case of Houghton, it started out with I think 11 or 13 phases. It's contracted and it actually has some pieces that have been carved out. That this is a carve out, and I don't know that I've got a specific tip ID number associated with the 5th Street to Tanca Verde phase. So what we would need to do is put the tip number and then put basically zeros to it.
Right. I believe, Kathleen, that there's a certain amount of county impact fees that could be brought to bear on the northern portion of Houghton, and there are a certain amount of city impact fees that could be brought to bear on the northern portion. But even given those amounts, it would still be underfunded.
We would, yeah, no question about it. So, but yeah, we will have to carry that into the conversation about remaining obligations of the RTA under the current ballot. So yes, we have to have that conversation.
But Jim, I'm afraid I'm in the same place with Anna and Catherine, in that even though we don't have funding, it should still be represented in the financial plan. And I think leaving it out kind of doesn't show where we're vulnerable, and we need to be showing that so that we're having an honest conversation with not only the rest of everybody within this envelope of putting together a plan, but with the board, with our boards, and as well as with the community. So I have to ask that whatever projects are actually part of the ballot approved needs to be included in this 5-year financial plan, whether there's funding for it or not.
Okay, I'm fine.
I mean, I also wonder with Grant and Tangerine and Silverbell, we hadn't put those out as specific phases, I don't think, in the tip, but it's still the same sort of point where the last phases of those projects don't appear to have adequate funded and are not accounted for.
We have to confront those issues. There's no question.
Right.
It's not our intention to not do that. We need to do it.
Yeah. They're just sort of, I guess the point I was trying to make is they're just listed differently, because those others are not listed by phase the way Houghton was listed by each individual project phase, and Valencia was listed by each individual project phase, right?
You know, that's a creation of the tip and the way these projects were created. So we have some that are, you know, that are multi-phased under one tip ID, others that the tip ID got carved up a number of different ways. Frankly, even within jurisdictions, they're not consistent between projects. So that's the situation there. And so I am putting this in here as a holding. And I presume Tucson would still be the jurisdiction that would be responsible on that.
Yes.
Okay. All right. We'll see about assigning it a tip ID number so that we can track it accordingly. And at this point in time, any remaining funds that are not absorbed by the 22nd to Irvington phase would roll to this particular project.
Agree.
Okay. All right. We still have we have 1.65 million, 1.675 million of 12R that we can put on a project. Since this has already got 12R on it, I'm going to propose that we put it on to 22nd Street. Okay, that's zeros, so put all of the funding on 22nd Street. I think of the issues that we passed. Are there any projects here that would be candidates for utilization of STBG? I think we put the last 2 years of STBG on the railroad, the Grant Road UPRR crossing. I know that's something that the city would prefer be accelerated and not use federal funds. Are there any other projects that look like they could absorb the federal funds that are in this universe of projects here?
They got to figure out a way to do it with not so many strings attached.
Yeah.
Here, here.
Yeah.
I don't know that we've got, let's see, just kind of looking through these projects. Harrison doesn't look like it's it would not, I mean, if we brought more funding to bear on it, maybe that could be a project that was federalized, but we don't have that within the current. The grouping, same thing with 22nd Street. It's far enough out that we could do it if we chose to, recognizing, of course, that anything that's federalized costs more. Other projects, if we delayed Valencia, that might be a project that could be federalized, although probably not desirable either.
Well, mainly that's not desirable because it's already in its current state probably underfunded.
Yeah. Yeah. No need to kick sand in the face, right? Let's see.
Straight from Keno to I-10.
Yeah,
Yeah.
originally that was
So
a project that.
Go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the city actually converted it to federal funding 10, 12 years ago because of the west side. They felt that it was a path forward because we're dealing with all kinds of issues from the local neighborhood regarding environmental justice issues. And they felt like there was a process that could be employed if it was federalized.
So, Jim, I'm open to that being federalized, but I don't want it tied to the bridge. So I know we're working on the bridge now, so there's 2 phases in this and that section. So I want to make sure we don't federalize the bridge because we're ready to go and we want to rock on that. But the second design that we would work on, which would be from the bridge down to I-10, I'm okay with putting federalized dollars there. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. I understand it. That was the original game plan that Mr. Glock had years ago. The only concern I have is that by virtue of it going through a park, an existing municipal park, that might add some wrinkles that I know have been cited in years past for reasons to defederalize projects.
But if we change the scope, that might change.
Yeah, if we don't touch the park, then we might be able to still move it forward, have it federalized projects and work around the park, which is which I don't know, from what I've been reading of prior conversations and community meetings, that was a big sticking point, was actually taking away from the park. So, that's part of the conversation as we move forward. And we're starting those conversations again with the community to understand what it is that they're looking at. But I would still be comfortable with federalizing that portion of 22nd from Keno to I-10. I just don't want the bridge federalized at all.
I understand. Okay.
I think we can get there for both of us.
Okay. it sounds like there are two areas that we probably need to take a look at least in terms of getting us to move forward with this financial plan that only gets to the ballot level. And that is, we need to circle back and take a look at the 22nd Street and the Grant UPRR. The Grant UPRR, what we probably need is an updated cost estimate from the team. See, and maybe take a look at, what they think it would cost if it was federalized, and what the delivery dates might be. The flip side would be what it would cost if it was not federalized, or what savings and how fast can we get it executed. So, those would be things that that I think we need to work on. But aside from those two issues and the larger, broader issue of additional funds for projects that are short, does this look reasonable enough for us to look at moving forward for discussion by TMC about these bigger issues?
I just wanted to ask one last question, really. I know we have had conversations, Catherine, about the northern segment of Houghton, but I wondered if you have a sense of how much in the way of county impact fees might be available up there?
I could pull the number from our recently adopted impact fee program. I don't have that in front of me, but it specifies exactly how much we can save because of development and our maximum impact fee contribution. So I can get you that number, Robin.
Okay. And I think at some future point we have 4 million on that one.
Okay.
On impact fees.
Okay.
This is Anna. I just wanted to, so we were talking about the federal money for years 25 and 26 litho project, and we'd have to, I guess we're thinking about putting it on 22nd Street. Is that what we're talking about?
That's a point of discussion that we're going to investigate going forward.
Okay. And because the other one I thought of was the Barraza Aviation Parkway extension.
Right.
I mean, that could use it also as we talk to ADOT with the implementation plan now that the DCR is complete.
Yeah, the Barraza Aviation right now, let's get back to it here, right past it. Right now, it currently does show all of our commitment is STBG. So if we went, if there was a way that, I mean, if we decided to put more money on it for whatever reason, that would be something that, that could be a solution in the future. If, for example, we were to extend the RTA and include more I-10 work on Barraza or on that phase, we could then, after that occurred, we could plunk money on it and then free up RTA dollars. But that's still that's outside of the scope of what we can do right now.
Okay. And then we didn't, I'm sorry, did we talk about the last two projects on their regional transportation data network? And
No.
We didn't, did we?
No.
That was what we were looking at, putting the RTDN on, basically federalizing it, obligating it, and then paying it out as the invoices come in, and do the same thing with the regional traffic signal program, the equipment. Obviously, we would have to adhere to federal procurement.
We wanted STPG funding on those to cover the RTA allotment, or is it just extra STPG we have out there that we want to put here?
Actually, this is it's a little bit of both. We have in the current plan ongoing funding that we've identified, and we have over the past, since the inception of the RTA, consistently funded RTDN and traffic signal equipment upgrades for the jurisdictions. There's nothing that says that we have to continue that. However, assuming that we are continuing it and we're committed to it, which, I think it only makes, as we look at, all of the measures that we have for improving traffic, this seems like a reasonable ongoing operations expense in the RTA. We do not need to continue to do it. What that would do is that would free up STBG in fiscal 22. If there was some other project that could receive it in fiscal 22, we can certainly move that. That's close to $2 million, a little over $2 million that could be put on another project that was federalized.
Jim, who's supposed to be getting those $2 million?
Well, I know that normally we go through a process where one entity will do a master contract for equipment. The jurisdictions would then, this is on the equipment phase, or equipment aspect of it. In the past, it's been the city of Tucson do a big purchase with an equipment manufacturer that everybody wants. They pull all of the jurisdictions, find out how many controllers they need, for example, and make one massive order off of the procurement that the jurisdiction did. That's the way it's been handled in the past. It can be used for other things, but that's what comes to mind. The other is we continue to pay SmartWave bills on behalf of the city of Tucson. That's the RTDN component.
Right.
That we've been paying for quite a long time. And to the extent we could federalize that, we would want to look at that potentially.
I don't know if we can, because I don't know what procurement practices was done to actually bring them on that would allow you to use federal dollars. And now we're under a contract. A repeat contract, almost an evergreen contract, I guess is a good way to put it.
Okay.
So we would kind of need to look at that to see if we could federalize that. And if we followed federal procurement practices from the beginning, then the answer would be yes. If we didn't, then you wouldn't be able to put federal dollars on that.
Okay.
And then on the traffic signal equipment, again, I think there might be some opportunities. I got to talk to the team to understand what they're using those dollars to buy, but we are trying to make some major improvements to our intersections and advance ours into the 21st century. So we could definitely, if we're going to be using those dollars to do that, we could definitely put that procurement practice out under federal guidelines to use federal dollars, just knowing that we're going to spend more money federalizing it than being able to purchase items.
Can I ask when the last time we had the subcommittee meeting for the traffic group?
You can ask. I don't know offhand. I can get back to you on that. I know Rick and Gabe and Paul have all been very involved in it, and I want to say I know I'm still signing off on invoices for equipment, so it can't have been that long ago. But the short answer is I don't know.
Okay.
What I think then it's legitimate to ask about is what we can do with those two allocations and really kind of dive into those two as well as the issues associated with the UPRR grant and 22nd Street project. So that's kind of, I knew that the STBG was going to be the biggest pain to deal with initially, and it's proven right. So we'll continue to look.
Yeah, you know, the thing about using federal dollars is if you're designing a project and you know you're federalizing it from the get-go, it's a little bit easier than halfway in between are you know, are almost through and then moving through. But I mean, it is easy to take a project. I mean, you can get through design and then move it to construction and federalize it. So I would say, you know, Jim, the bridge over 22nd, we could federalize it, but we know we're going to spend twice as much money, and we already are tight on have a shortfall. Because, you know, we went for quite a few grants hoping we'd have some success to meet that gap. And the last one, we actually, the request we made, we doubled because we had planned on federalizing it because we were getting federal dollars and we knew we'd have to spend more. So I think that's part of the challenge as well, is when you try to do something after the fact, it just drives the cost up that it's almost not worth getting the federal dollars because you still won't have enough money to do the project.
Right. Okay.
Again, I think y'all need to work with the federal government, have them release some of the strings that they put on it so we can actually use the money.
Right. We'll get right on it. No, I say that flippantly, obviously, but no, we certainly understand that, and to the extent, I mean, one of the things we've tried to do to the extent possible is direct as much of our funding towards ADOT projects that we're doing with ADOT, so that those dollars, you know, ADOT is already accustomed to meeting federal requirements on almost all of its work. You know, those would be recipient projects that could efficiently use those dollars. So I just wish there were more of them. And I'm sure Rod does too. At this point, I don't know that I have anything else to present. I've gone about, I mean, I think we've talked about all of the projects. One of the things that we could do is move this forward as a recommended draft project list with the following concerns or following issues that's resolved. We can also try to come back again to grind on it some more if we think there'd be value to that before doing this kind of a motion. My hope is that we can have a meaningful conversation about this and the other issues that are facing us when we reconvene the technical management committee, which I think is going to be in mid.
So Jim, Diana, a question here. So if we make a motion and move this forward as a draft with the recommendations and changes that we discussed today, it would move to the technical management committee?
It would be represented as a draft that the TIP working group or the TIP committee forwarded for further consideration, recognizing that it's that we have these other issues still out there. We don't know what our funding picture is going to be fully like in the next 5 years. And that's not one that's going to easily resolve itself. But
You're right.
Right now we're seeing decent numbers. We're unexpectedly favorable to what we had earlier predicted, so that bodes well. But we still have some structural problems in our economy locally and nationally that may come back to haunt us financially. Yeah.
No way.
No, I know, preaching to the choir here, but yeah, I mean that, we know this is a step, but to the extent we can say this looks like a reasonable way to spend the money that's on the ballot numbers, let's talk about what else we need to do. That would be that's the way I would want to move forward with it.
So I hear you, but I have to tell you, I would like to have another conversation.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of movement that we made today. There's a lot of questions that we raised that y'all have to go and get answers and bring back. I would be a little bit more comfortable if we could have another. And I'm sorry to do this because I'm the last person to ask for meetings because my calendar is crazy. But I just, before we, and if everybody disagrees with me, I'm going to go along with the consensus of the team, of the group. But I just feel like this is so important and we just really need to get it right before we move it forward, because what I don't want to do is have something reflected incorrectly and then I'm having on the technical management committee raising it. I don't think that that's the where we want to do it. I think we want to keep it here, get it right, and then move it forward. That's just my 2 cents.
Carolyn, do we have a slate of potential dates that we've been looking at?
Hi, Jim. Yes, I actually have 2 items I'd like to discuss right now. The first one, I'd like to formally just, for the record, make sure that we know that Patricia Pablo has been with us for this conversation.
Great, thank you.
She is a voting member, so I want to be sure that she's mentioned. Thank you for joining us. And we do have a possible date of October 23rd. That's a Friday. It's in a couple of weeks. I'm wondering if this would be a date that might be possible should there be a vote to continue this discussion.
I will rearrange whatever I need to make sure I can participate.
Okay.
Okay, do you want to put that in a form of a motion?
Carolyn, please, I have a question.
Yes.
So I had a question back on the sheet that we were looking at with
can you reshare with me, Carolyn?
on the totals, that would be great.
Okay, you back up?
Yes, that one's perfect. So I agree with what Diana says, for us to be, have another meeting to discuss and have more clarity on this plan. But one thing that I would love to see is, and I get it that the budgets are fluid. They always look, right? We don't know what's gonna happen. We didn't know what was gonna happen back in 2006 when we voted for this, but we still had a forecast and we still planned with that forecast. When I summed up for this plan, it was 132 million in 5 years. So I don't know how much of the available RTA there is in the next 5 years, or how much is going to debt service and all that. So I think before we recommend any RTA alone projects, we would need to know where the RTA money is going, not just on these, but
Okay.
where all that is going, because.
Sure, I'm happy to share that information at this point in time. You know, I can tell you in the broadest of terms. We have zeroed out all of the categorical with the exception of the wildlife linkage funding that's already been committed. We do have 2 $5 million allocations of RTA 41. That's stuff that, or those are funds that had been in the 20 to 24 tip, but without named projects. We were holding those dollars until such time as we were able to go through with, reconvene a bike committee that would, or a bike pedestrian committee that could help program that in conjunction with the next round of enhancements, if you will, or block grant, whatever the federal legislation ends up turning into. When we knew that it was all dependent upon the next federal bill. So we were looking at trying to leverage that. Plus, we have all of the transit projects continuing on at a 3% growth rate, with the exception of the streetcar, which exhausts its allocation, I believe, sometime in 23 or 24. So that, in a nutshell, is what the remaining projects are. There's no fluff in it. I can tell you that we're, depending upon what our revenue estimates are, we're probably somewhere in the $50 to $60 million range unallocated at this point. But we do have to meet all of our debt service obligations, which are just under $30 million a year. And we do have operating costs that are on the order of $1.6 million, I think, per year. We do have to pay for, and that operating cost includes, the state mandated performance audit, our annual financial audits, our legal fees, and at some point in time, we'll have to absorb about a $2 million cost associated with the cost running the election, which will be payable to the Pima County Elections Department. So that's the program outside of what you see here. And I'd be happy to share it with you to show you what we're looking at and how it all sums up.
That'd be great. And because so as we talk about moving this specific list forward to TMC, are we moving forward a portion of the tip for them to review? And then we're going to piecemeal the tip pieces to them, and at one point we'll talk about a whole tip with TMC?
Well, you know, and that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that yet. You know, we need to get some policy discussions going. You know, there are policy discussions regarding, you know, projects that are in this program that, you know, may not look quite like the ballot says they look. So that's a group of policy discussions that need to take place. And that'll have a financial ramification or have financial ramifications as well. There are also, you know, do we take and identify a body of unallocated funding for use on over or projects that run over? You know, these are things that really, you know, we can't resolve without policy discussion. And that's, I think, where we need to go next.
So that's probably maybe an agenda item for TMC to have a policy discussion.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but you know, our hope would be to box this up and show that this is where we stand in terms of meeting the ballot amounts. Here are what the remaining issues are. Let's start working on those issues.
So,
And
but
that's
Jim,
kind of how I saw that.
yeah, no, I agree, but do we want to sort of have some of that discussion here about how we would like the policy decisions to look when it goes to the technical management committee for consideration to move on to the regional board? I mean, we're the ones actually the folks out there getting the work done, so we know it better than anybody. Do we not want to be making some of those recommendations to put on the table for those policy decisions and make that part of our agenda? I mean, food for thought. If I'm way out, I'm sorry. It's just.
Yeah, I mean, from my standpoint, you know, if the policymakers want us involved in having that discussion, I think it's appropriate for them to direct us to have that conversation. But I think for us to bring it up to them, it is probably, I mean, we can come up with a recommendation to delegate it down to us, but I think it really needs to start with them in terms of the direction.
Yeah, but at some point, when are we going to provide them with all this information to give us direction?
Well, I mean, my whole hope would be to have this put together in some format that we could forward to them and then initiate the discussion.
Well, then I would go back and say, then this really needs to be the full picture and not piecemeal. And I mean, it should mirror what's in the tip. I just still strongly am kind of leaning that way. If that's going to be where we're going to take the conversation with them, I think we need to reflect everything. It should mirror what's in the tip, and then they understand where the challenges are so that they can give us direction. You know, that's just my 2 cents.
And if I may, this is Robin, I would like to add that when we have our policy body meet, we as staff like to have it fully vetted so that we can answer questions at the time of the meeting when it's agendized and give them at least somewhat of a basis to start the discussions. And I'm seeing with this document that we're not being able to tell them enough that they would be able to start making those decisions.
Well, one thing that I can tell you that we have done, I know that we had some very broad level cost estimating that was presented to the TMC a year or better ago that Rick had done. It was showing a gap in the order of somewhere in the 300 million range between what it looked like it took to close the projects out over and above what the ballot amount was. So, you know, that has already gone to the TMC at one point. I think what we need to do now is is present them this, and then, together with that information, remind them of what we've previously shown them, and come forward with a recommendation on how we would want to move forward with resolving this. I mean, my first sense is that, we need to make sure that we, those projects that are imminent and short, we need to deal with. Projects that come to mind right off the bat are both the Sunset and Downtown Links projects, followed by a series of other projects in order. I know we've got those would be the first ones that I think we need to lay out. I think there's also probably a discussion that needs to take place about whether or not we include part of this as a request for inclusion in the RTA continuation plan, the RTA next. Do we look at bringing in additional funds through that in order to augment? And maybe we say this is the time to look at Harrison and make it full 4-lane project and do that through RTA next, rather than try to cobble together some funding to build a 2-lane bridge. So, I mean, these are things that I think we need to talk about at a lot of different levels. I'm not opposed to having the conversation here about it. I just think that ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to need to be something that that the TMC really forwards to the RTA board and to regional council.
And I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that, Jim, but the idea that you just mentioned about the bridge, instead of building that, we just take that funding, we move it forward to the next RTA. That's a conversation before it even goes to the TMC. That's a conversation I need to be having with the political wills and the community out there to make sure that's something that's even agreeable, because RTA next has to be voted on and it may not be successful. And then if we say, yeah, this is going to be the new direction and policy we're taking, then that project's off the table, and that's problematic because that is really a need, as is every other project. So that's a really a conversation I think also internally we need to be having and sharing with our elected officials, so we get some guidance about where they envision or want the changes within the RTA current plan of what moves to the next one, versus it being staff going to technical, then going to the board. I think that that's something that, our mayor needs to be having have the ability to have the conversation with the whole council about that direction, versus it being moving in this direction. So I just say, let's be really careful with that, because that's a slippery slope. And I know it's not the direction any of us want to go on, but that's why I'm saying I think it might be worthwhile to start having conversation at this level, understanding what we can and can't do, what we see as reasonable and unreasonable. Because like I said, we're the ones out there doing this and building it. And then we can take that to our own individual bodies and councils and have the conversation with them, so that our folks that sit on the regional board know what direction the body of the council is willing to move in to help us get to this point to where we can balance out based on the funding that is available. What projects do happen, and then what projects move to RTA next. I mean, I think that's a fair approach.
Hey, Jim and Diana, if I may.
Sure.
If we talk about policies, and maybe this is a good discussion to have, the TMC policy subcommittee could be established and discuss this, to develop a policy and recommendation to TMC about how we want to spend. And to go back to this plan, we talked about having extra 12 SDPG and an extra 12.6 maybe. I mean, we need to see if there's absolutely any money extra RTA, and we need to make the recommendation on which projects we would think would be the good. I think that's what Diana's talking We want to make
Correct.
recommendation as at this level. And if it's a subcommittee to the TMC, that's what it was established for, to develop and propose policy. Maybe we reconvene that committee and we could review everything, but we need to know what's available by knowing how much money has been assigned to the categoricals in which years, how much is being spent here, so that we know exactly what is left over or not in each year. And then we can make those recommendations to the TMC.
I like that
agree with
approach.
both of you. Yeah,
Well,
and this is Robin. The one thing that I would add to that, just in general, is that that subcommittee could easily be this group or the TPC, right? Because we're the ones that essentially in this group are in both of those. And we should be able to come together looking at all of the information and be the group that fully vets all the possibilities to take to the TMC.
Well, as Robin so correctly points out, it's, we wear many hats here. And the directors of each of the departments of transportation sit on the TMC policy subcommittee, as well as 2 members from the consulting community. And that would be perfectly appropriate from my standpoint to run it through them. But we really need to have that charge from the TMC to do this work. So, getting it to the TMC so they see it, and give the TMC policies subcommittee some specific direction on policy they want to see developed.
So why do we have to have that charge from them?
In part because that's basically what the TMC policy subcommittee does is serves at the request of the broader TMC. If they haven't requested, then I don't feel good about moving forward with it.
But I thought
Jim,
that.
Excuse
Sorry.
me, this is Dave. I'm sorry, I need to interrupt. We have wandered way off of the focus for today. I want to remind everybody that the TIP is the PAG process. The TMC is an RTA process. The list that we have before you today is the first of, at least 3 lists, was what Jamie mentioned at the very beginning. This is an RTA project list, which is in the PAG TIP. So while going to the TMC with this list next month would be great. That is external to the TIP process. So if I may ask Jamie to steer us back on course on what next steps would be for this TIP process.
Well, Dave, with all due respect, I don't quite agree with that because I think it's all interrelated. I mean, we've pretty much, the boards have decided that the RTA and the PAG are going to be intertwined, and we're just trying to help move everything forward. But again, we're the ones getting the work done. And so I'm 2 years into this and I'm still trying to figure out the way some things work. So forgive me for that, but I don't think we're really that way off course. And I don't think any of the requests that we're asking is out of ordinary whatsoever. And I thought at one time that the subcommittee regularly met, and then for some reason it didn't, it stopped. And, and I think this is a good time that we actually should put it back together and be having the conversation. Because, my boss is always asking me, make a recommendation, Diana, what is it? What do you think? How do you, and because we're the ones in there, in the trenches getting the work done. So with all due respect, I don't think we're off course at all. I think these are very fair questions. It's a difficult conversation to be had. Anytime you don't have enough money, it's a difficult conversation. But it's a realistic one that we need to be open and honest and be having with each other so that we can be giving the best recommendations and not feel like anyone's getting slighted or the community's getting slighted, but and that we're successful the next step around. I mean, everybody wants us to continue moving forward with these initiatives because look at the value that it has already brought to our regional area, and we want to continue it. And I think these conversation needs to be had. If you're asking me now then to approve this in draft form, I can't. My motion would be that we actually hold another committee meeting on October 23rd. Okay, I'll make the motion. I move that we hold another meeting to finalize this draft report, financial plan, before moving it forward, and set that meeting for October 23rd.
I second.
Okay,
If I may,
yeah,
I turned on my camera actually to help address the question that Anna had earlier about the process, but now there's a motion. So I don't want to interrupt that motion. And Carolyn, I don't know if you want to help with running the motion aspect of this. I'm happy to go back to your question though, Anna, about the assemblage of the different lists and what that's going to look like with the process. But I think we've got a motion, so I don't want to interrupt that.
Thank you, Jamie. We do have a motion on the floor, and it sounds like we have a second from Anna. And just a quick reminder, we only have the ability to have one vote per jurisdiction.
Oh, man. Come on, let me have.
I'm sorry, gotta be fair.
No, you're right. It does have to be fair. I'm just teasing, Carolyn.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'm sorry. What was the motion?
Zonia, can you please repeat the motion?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, clear.
The motion was made by Diana to move to hold another meeting to move this draft plan to October the 23rd, to subsequent another meeting for it, and Anna seconded the motion.
Thank you, Zonia. Okay.
Was that correct, Miss Diana?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay.
So let's
Can
call
we-
vote.
So we have a first and a second. Should we take a voice vote? I can call by name. Beth Abramovitz. Yay or nay? To continue to the 23rd. Okay, is that a no vote, Beth? Okay,
Carolyn, can you hear me?
I can now, thank you.
It's a yay. Yeah.
Yay, thank you. Okay, Jason Bahi,
Yay.
thank you. Keith Braun,
Nay.
I'm sorry, was that a yay or a nay?
No.
Thank you. Ms. Patricia Pablo,
Yay.
thank you. Mr. Jose Rodriguez,
Yay.
Mr. Roderick Lane.
Yay.
Okay. Motion passes, and we will continue to October 23rd. We will send out a meeting hold date very shortly. And with that, we have two options here. We can return to Jamie's question for Miss Anna, or we can proceed. Ms. Alvarez, would you like to proceed with that question, or should we hold that item until the next meeting?
No, if Jamie could answer the question, that would be wonderful.
Okay, Jamie, are you available?
Yeah. Hi.
Thank you.
So our understanding of the process is that we have two TPC meetings. Now we actually have another TIP subcommittee meeting, for which there'll be an opportunity to see the draft list in advance and then discuss those. So we've got a December TPC meeting and a January TPC meeting. So that's what we're currently thinking are the opportunities to see the full lists. So at the December meeting, we anticipate having a full list apart from the ADOT list. If that's not possible, then we'll move that to the January 20th meeting, where we will we anticipate having the ADOT project list available. So some of this may depend on how this RTA project list process goes, but that's our thinking right now. And if that changes, we'll certainly let you know. So I hope that helps answer the question.
That did answer the question of going to the list, and then I guess it would be my recommendation, the county's recommendation, that if this body is going to send anything forward to TMC to review, it would be the full tip, not pieces of it. I mean, I would prefer to make a recommendation of the 22-26 tip to the TMC, as opposed to here's a little piece. You might have questions, but we'll wait till next time. That would be my recommendation, that this body, when we do make a recommendation moving forward to TMC, that it is a full tip with all the information and all its constraints explained.
And if I may add to that, so the management committee will see the full list in March, as will the regional council. So the intent is for the TPC to recommend the lists for management consideration and then subsequently to regional council. So I know management and TMC are different committees, but just so you know, the management committee will seek a recommendation from TPC.
Of the full tip list, right? Yeah, that's I'm fine with that. It was just that at this point right now, we were thinking about moving forward just the RTA partial list. And
So, Diana here, Anna, if I can piggyback on to what she's saying, at the meeting on the 23rd, could we get the list in that presentation so that we know, instead of just seeing the RTA and how that funding works with it, how it also fits in the tip, so we can see the whole picture? I think that's because when we look at it, we're looking at the whole picture. So it would be very helpful to us if we could do that. So just picking back on Anna, if that's what's going to be moved forward to the next committee review for approval to go forward to the board, can we have that whole picture as well so that we understand what the ask is?
I don't know that we were anticipating moving that quickly with the full list. We still need to work with our colleagues at the TAA, for example, on their draft list and also confirm some other elements internally. That said, we'll take that under consideration. I don't think that we were intending to bring the full list to the TIP subcommittee in 2 weeks, but again, we'll consider that and see if that's possible.
You know, what I think we can do is we can certainly bring forward the full range of RTA program so you can see that.
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit. Jim, can you say that one more time? I'm
I'm
sorry.
Yeah,
No, I think that was someone sending an email and it piped in when you were talking. So I think it's me, not you.
Oh, okay. I was just saying we can certainly show the full range of RTA program projects that and where they appear over the 5-year plan.
I think that is one element that we would like to see. And then the other is also the funding. So Jamie, if there is that potential of having that big picture, I think that'll be really helpful. Am I correct in that understanding, Anna?
yes, and if I understood Jamie correctly, it won't go to the list. The full tip won't go to regional council until like March, maybe, or April. So even if we don't have that in October, we still have time before then to see the full list before we make a recommendation.
Correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Excuse me, this is Dave again. Can I get clarification on what you mean by the full list?
So to me, the tip, so if we look back at the last tip that was approved, it included every.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so, and that was, Jamie explained at the opening, and I mentioned this earlier, and again, this is the PAG side, and there is a difference between the PAG side and the RTA side. We're two separate entities. So the transit working group will be meeting here soon. They will have another list, and that will be in response to the NOFA. And then ADOT will hopefully have their project list, and that will be the third and hopefully the final list, and that we hope to see in January. So the TPC will be seeing this, as you have in the past, in pieces, but we'll try to make sure that it's clear of what you're looking at the time. Does that kind of make sense?
Thank you.
Dave, this is Catherine. Can you clarify, you keep saying the TIP is a PAG. The TIP subcommittee, I believe, is both a PAG and RTA subcommittee for your website and how it's acted in the past. As
Right.
They're both a PAG and an RTA committee.
Well, we have again, this is the last projects that are on the TIP based on the 2014 RTA board directive is all the funding goes to RTA projects. So the TIP is supposed to identify all the projects in the 5-year plan. And at this time, it's the bulk of it is RTA. We don't identify specifically on by the subcommittee if we're going to be talking about RTA issues or PAG issues. Right now, it is as of today, it is an RTA project list in the PAG TIP, and the TIP is, and I welcome Nathan, who's got many years of experience and expertise in this, to jump in and explain what the TIP is and how we are required by the feds and ADOT to put this together on a regular basis. Actually, Nathan, if you're out there, can you give us a little background on that?
That I can. The final product of the TIP is a federally required planning document that is produced by PAG. Catherine, though, is correct that the TIP subcommittee is both a TIP subcommittee for PAG and RTA. But depending on the hat that they wear, the functions that they perform are somewhat different. When acting as an RTA TIP subcommittee, they review the RTA programming recommendations that will then be inserted into the full TIP, which is then reviewed by the PAG TIP subcommittee. And so rather than convene 2 different meetings with the same people to do those 2 steps, this body serves both functions at the same time. And I'm not sure if that answers the question. If not, I can.
So it's a question of funding, and today and on the 23rd will be addressed in the RTA when we take this to TPC with the Transit Working Group recommendation. That will be the PAG side accepting, or at least considering, the Transit Working Group's recommendations. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So this is Anna, and I apologize for my confusion. When we as a TPC requested a TIP subcommittee, I did not feel the need to clarify that we wanted only a TIP subcommittee for RTA only and not a TIP subcommittee for PAG. So if we want to see the other projects, do we need to have a TIP subcommittee for PAG? Or is it all one? For us,
well, the intent that this was going to be the only subcommittee meeting because to address specifically the RTA funded projects. Pardon me. Because of the structure of the NOFA and the funding that's available this year, this year. That's a focus on transit. So the Transit Working Group would be considering those projects. In the past, if they were projects available and not restricted, if they were available to everybody, then then this group would be considering weighing in on those projects as well.
I think historically, the Transit Working Group recommendations have gone directly to TPC. I don't believe the committee has ever reviewed Transit Working Group recommendations.
Yes, and that's our intent this year as well.
This is Diana. I'm understanding what you're saying, and I'm not necessarily saying I want to look at all of the projects. I do want to continue to focus in on the RTA project, but I want to look at the full picture of the funding mechanism. And I don't think that the current action plan reflects that. And I think that that's what we're looking for, is understanding that full funding mechanism. And then also the projects that are part of RTA, but are not able to be funded because we're actually quite a few $1 million short of what was projected in the original 2006 ballot approval. So I understand, but because all the dollars that are in PAG have now been by the board deemed to be appropriated to RTA, I feel that that funding source needs to be reflected in our RTA draft plan 100%, as well as any other dollars, whether it's county or city impact fees, bond dollars, whatever it is. I think, and I would like to see the full funding program for the remaining RTA projects to understand really what is our shortfall and what is not, and then how are we getting that funded? Because that's what you're asking us to do, is to approve the RTA project list to move to the next level, yet we're not having the full picture. And so,
Well, excuse me, Diana, I think that, and I may be not following you, but I know that for each of the jurisdictional one-on-one meetings we had over the last month, I believe that Jim presented all of the, or with the exception of 2.6, and he explained that earlier while we were waiting to get that clarified. I think he covered everything on the one-on-ones, unless I'm misunderstanding you.
well, David, yes, we did, and we've had a lot of conversations, and I can tell you my one-on-one that I had has already altered significantly to what we discussed today. So I hear you, and I'm not disagreeing, but I'm also not agreeing. I'm just saying that this is a very important discussion that needs to be had. And again, we're the ones getting the work done. And we want, to continue to have a lot of success as we move forward. But also, it's really hard for us to look at it and the RTA is covering the jurisdiction. It's not just the city of Tucson. It's not just, Marana. It's not just, it's not just one independent jurisdiction. It's all of us. And yet we were taking a small snapshot and having a discussion. And then the draft was very different than what we had in that original discussion. But now this is the first time as a group we're looking at the big picture, and we still don't have all the picture. And I would just like to see everything in front of me so I really understand what it is that we're making a recommendation to move forward on. That's what I'm asking for. And I feel it's a little bit piecemealed, and I'd like to understand all of it, because we are mixing dollars. We are taking PAG dollars and we're moving them over to RTA, yet it's not reflective. And I want it to all be reflected. I want everything reflected in it, because you're asking me to make a recommendation to move it forward for consideration. And I don't think about just the city of Tucson. I do think about the region, because people that come into the city go out of the city. I go out of the city, to do shopping and to visit and stuff. So I'm always thinking about that regional approach and what it looks and feels like. Yet we're not having a regional discussion. And I think we need to be having more of that. And I think this has been a great opportunity, and I appreciate it. And I want to continue with these types of conversations, because I think these are so meaningful. Painful anytime you don't have enough money, that is a painful discussion. But as a region, let's have the conversation about what is in the best interest of the region as a whole, as to move forward with the recommendation. And it may be that the city does exactly what Jim recommended, is we're recommending to pull the bridge out on Halton off and move it forward to the next one. That may be the best recommendation. That again is a regional conversation that I think we all need to be happening, because Halton doesn't just stop at the city limits. It goes out, and it affects other cities and other jurisdictions other than the city of Tucson.
Well, what I think we can do to get back on the question on the revenues is, I think I hope that we've explained thoroughly enough the process and how the lists come to you as they do. They do that. We can provide the revenue projections that this subcommittee approved in August, and we can provide the revenue projections that the RTA board has seen as well. So we can send those back out to you. But those are revenue projections are what constrained the list that this group is considering today, and again on the 23rd. That's how this list was derived. Was based on the revenue projections that you've seen and that you approved in August.
Okay, this is Robin, but I think there's more to it than revenue projections. It's also how would you allocate all of those pieces against all of these projects? I think it's even okay to just look at this list of projects, but we need to see the whole entire story for each of them, even if it's not solidified yet.
Well, that's going to be a decision of the TPC, which of course you all represent, when the time comes, as to whether or not you want to approve the list as you get it, or if you want to wait till January or February, I think would be the following one. So,
I don't understand why you can't make an approximate list, and I understand why the ADOT money, but that's a very small portion of this. But there's a lot of pieces that are not reflected yet on the list that we've been looking at today.
well, the transit working group hasn't made a recommendation on the.
I wasn't actually talking about transit.
Well,
Jamie,
that's
I'm
one of the
talking
other
about-
lists. That's one of the other lists that goes to the TPC, the management committee, and the regional council. And the third one is the ADOT list, and they have their process that we have to respect and follow. And they don't have their list approved until at the earliest January of next year. If we had that, believe me, you would have it in front of you.
But there's other things that are not on this, like some of the HERF 12.6 is not on here. Not all of the county bonds, all of the impact fees are not on here. There are quite a few funding sources that have not been yet allocated against these projects. So it's not possible to see the entire picture yet. And I think we'll be able to see it on the 23rd.
If I may, I think one of the things that we need to show with this is the current tip. You know,
Yes,
that's going to show that's going to show, you know, I provided a current program that really looked at only the supplanted or the 12R and the RTA, and I gratuitously threw in a couple of other ones on a project where I thought there would be an interest in it. Clearly, there's more interest in that. We can certainly provide that. We do have a bit of a challenge in terms of just the format of our program, in terms of the number of fields we can put in. We'll work on seeing if we can get that so that we can add the existing tip to the 5-year beyond that. It's going to be, you know, a machination that we have to go through. It is also one of the things that I don't have clarity on. I can tell you what the commitment was in terms of the impact fees to be spent on projects, but I do not routinely get reported information on the expenditure of impact fees by the jurisdictions. I'm going to need your help in terms of identifying what's still out there, what's been committed already and expended on these projects.
Okay.
Because I don't track that information other than incidentally.
Right.
And that's
and
part
we
of
have that by the 23rd. I'm sorry, Jim.
I'm going to have to ask the jurisdictions to mine their own information and forwarded that to me so that I can incorporate it into the spreadsheet.
Great. Perfect.
Fair enough.
Okay, Dave, we are past our time now. I'm wondering if we can wrap up this conversation. It sounds like we have a list of action items to prepare for the meeting on the 23rd. One of them being the fees and the impact fees from both jurisdictions, or it's my understanding it's just Pima County and the city of Tucson. Jim, is that correct?
No, I believe there's also funding that
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Marana was also going to reflect funding on the Tangerine Road project as well.
Okay. So Miranda, the city of Tucson and Pima County will provide to us these numbers. And we tend to send these packets out a week ahead of time, so that's pretty short. Do we think that this is possible? City of Tucson, Pima County, and Marana?
Yes.
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 Thank you for answering that. So that'll be included in the next packet. Is there anything else on this item, or can we move to adjournment?
So Carolyn, if I may, I don't want to prolong this, but I just want to be clear about what list we're going to be showing at the next meeting. I heard some different things. I think we clarified that we're not going to have all the lists ready, but it sounds like we just want more information about the RTA roadway project list in terms of the other funding sources, and that's what we'll be discussing. Is that correct, Jim and others, or is there something else?
One other thing that I was asked to provide was additional information on the categoricals and the bonding information. We can show that as well.
Okay,
it might be in a separate spreadsheet that we'll have to refer back and forth to, so it may be a little quirky, but in terms of the conversation, but we'll have that information.
Jim, this is Catherine. Are you going to provide, earlier we talked about having a good view of the prior years of the RTA and if we've met those commitments for categoricals especially. Is that something that you could do the full picture of the RTA program?
I don't know what you're defining as the full picture. You know, are you talking about the number of projects, the amount of money expended, how is it that you're, I mean, I can give you a roll-up of how much money was spent on RTA 36, for example, if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. How much in 40, 41, 37, yeah, all of them.
Yeah, we got all that.
Okay. Jamie, I believe that's all, each of the items that I captured during the discussion.
Okay.
Okay. So the next meeting will be held on the morning of October 23rd. And with that, we move to adjournment.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.